Hey parents and coaches, are your kids using the right glove? The most important skill for youth athletes to learn is how to play proper catch. The problem is, most youth gloves are made with bad leather and are too big for small hands. They actually make it harder to play catch. That's why former Major League Baseball shortstop Kevin Smith created Cali gloves. Cali gloves are crafted from 100% Japanese kip leather and are the perfect size for kids. All Cali gloves come with palm slits, finger loops, and elastic wrist lacing that encourage proper hand placement, the right closing patterns, and give kids more confidence to go make plays. Cali gloves even allow parents to break in the glove without stretching out the fit. It's the glove Kevin wishes he had growing up, and the glove all his teammates want for their kids. Visit CaliGloves.com to learn more and help your kids play better catch. That's Cali Gloves, Kali gloves.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of In the Clubhouse with EMD Baseball. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my wonderful co-host Keith Glasser. How we doing?
Great. How are you?
We're good. It's that time of year. It's pulse check time, if you will. If you can't get excited for this, you better check your pulse, as we used to say. But it's November. Most kids who are serious about becoming college players, serious about being really good high school players, you got about 5 months, right? Clock is ticking. And what we want to take a couple minutes to talk about here, and I'll kick it over to you in a second, is what are you doing? What are you doing to separate yourself from the crowd? What are you doing to put yourself in a position to make a mark on your high school team? What are you doing to put yourself in a position to have a great spring season so you can parlay that into a really good summer season so that you can get recruited? Specifically for those guys who are in the 2027 class and you're uncommitted, like you got work to do. If you're uncommitted right now, the baseball world is telling you that you got work to do. And you got to look yourself in the mirror and figure out, like, am I doing what needs to be done? So I think that's kind of the crux of what we're trying to get across here. So I'm gonna kick it over to you for some opening thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that it's November 3rd. So for the majority of people who are going to be going through the recruiting process, you have 4 or 5 months to kind of either decompress for a little bit away from baseball after the summer and the fall seasons have ended, and then, get back after it to figure out where your deficiencies are, right? So, what do you have to get better at in order for you to up your game for next year? And then obviously, continue to strengthen your strengths over the course of the next 5 months. Getting in the weight room, obviously a huge deal over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. If you get in the weight room 3, 4 times, 5 times a week over the course of the next, November, December, January, February, you're going to look like a completely different person when you put a uniform on at tryouts come March. And, for the majority of people, again, like you're probably going to start tryouts in late February, early March, mid to late March, games in March and April. You want to give yourself the best chance of success going into your high school season so that you can build upon that into the summer, and specifically for the 27s where, next summer is going to be a huge summer for you from a recruiting standpoint. You want to give yourself the best foot forward that you possibly can. And it's not something that happens in January or February. It's stuff that's going to start to happen now in November, December, January, February, where that gives you 4 full months of lead up to, build up your arm strength, get better in the cage, get better defensively, get better from a physicality standpoint, getting in the weight room, maybe doing some speed training stuff to get yourself a little bit faster, whatever that might be. But, the time is now to do that, not mid-February of next year where it's like, oh, shoot, we have tryouts in like 3 weeks, so I should probably get in the cage a couple times before we roll it out there. And that's not to say that, we don't have some dual sport athletes out there that are doing some other things, but your conditioning, your lifting, those things are kind of being taken care of while you're playing that sport. You just got to take a little bit more time to get better at your baseball side of things. So, I thought it was poignant to at least have the conversation here at the start of November where, the kind of the fall from a recruiting standpoint obviously wrapped a couple weeks ago as the quiet period started after Jupiter around the 8th to the 13th or 18th of October. I know there's a handful of other things going on out there with the Halloween Havoc tournaments all over the country. But, the reality is the baseball season is pretty much over for the most part. And it's a good time to kind of evaluate how your summer went, what it is that you need to, clearly work on to get better. And if you don't know, right, ask your coaches, call people like us who do this for a living and say hey, how can you help us? And what is it that I need to get better at in order to achieve my goal of playing college baseball? And have those tough conversations because, if you're going to go into it blind, you're going to kind of struggle with this. But, at the bare minimum, you need to be in the weight room, you need to be hitting, you need to be throwing and building up safely over the course of the next 4 months so that your summer next year, you're able to really showcase yourself and your abilities at the highest level that you could possibly be at so that you can, live the dream of being recruited to play college baseball.
Yeah, these 4 or 5 months are where guys separate themselves. Honestly, I don't want to sound too hyperbolic, but it's where dreams are made. This is the guys who really want to get after it for the next 5 months in the weight room specifically. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, but the physical piece of all of this is the biggest separator for kids. It's not skill acquisition. It's different than other sports and it's a little bit counterintuitive, right? It's easy to get your swings. It's easy to do that kind of stuff. It's not hard. The hard part is going to the weight room 4 or 5 times a week. The hard part is doing your speed work. The hard part is nutrition. The hard part is making sure you're getting enough sleep. The hard part is also doing well in school. But we've seen this. I've seen it as a coach where you see a kid in the fall, he's not quite there, and you're waiting for him. You want to follow up and go see him in the spring. I've seen it from our perspective and how we do things now where there's basically 2 paths. There's the kid who gets after it for 5 months, who puts his head down, who isn't worried about anything but getting better. And then there's the kid who thinks he's working hard by doing a couple things a couple times a week. And ultimately what ends up happening is he stays the same, but the rest of the people pass him. So you actually get worse. And the guys who put their heads down, and we've seen this routinely, there's a young man who comes to mind that is committed to a legitimate program, high-end Division I program, who was 83 to 86 this time last year. He just threw down in Jupiter, and he was 90 to 93, and it's not by accident. And I think that sometimes social media, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, Coach Glass, so bear with me for a second. I think that sometimes social media only shows the flashes of the peak performance. So there's a lot of people who may have seen the video of the kid, and I'll leave his name out of it because I haven't talked to him about whether he wanted me to talk about it or not, but may have seen a video of the young man at 90 to 93 and go down and dominate in Jupiter, and they go, oh, well, that kid's just awesome. He must be really, really good. What they don't know is that kid took feedback on where he was a year ago and said, what do I need to do? Tell me and I will do it. He went and did it. And he is where he is now because he worked at it, not because he was just given the ability to throw a ball 93 miles an hour. He built that up and he earned every mile an hour along the way. And the kids who take that path, whether you end up pitching at the highest level of college baseball or you end up putting yourself in a position to be recruitable. I've seen kids who are this time of year, they're 77 miles an hour, and they're probably not a college baseball player if you fast forward a year and they don't get any better. And you watch that kid go get after it, and he eats well and he works hard. Next thing you know, he's a recruitable kid next summer and he finds a place to play college baseball. I've also seen guys who are 82 to 84 this time of year, and they come out next spring and they're 82 to 84 and they're wondering why nobody's calling them. Because you leave breadcrumbs, right? Coaches who are paying attention, they look at it and they're like, well, that kid, he obviously didn't do anything because he didn't get any better. So what you do the next 5 months, specifically for the 27 class and the 28s as well, like it is going to have a massive impact on whether you're recruitable or not. And the guys who are willing to put in the time, the sweat, and the effort, they will be rewarded on the backside of this. That's almost a guarantee. The guys who decide to work, they will pass people and they will put themselves in a position to be recruitable. And that's really where it starts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the crux of what we're trying to drive at is that like there's a lot of stuff that has to go on behind the scenes, and how good you get depends on how much time, energy, and effort you want to put into it. And now that the season's over and you are a 2027, or even if you're a 2028, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get actively recruited next year, but figure out what it is that you need to get better at and have those conversations and get in the weight room and get more physical and do those things to be able to get yourself to the point where you're going to put yourself in a position to where people are going to start taking notice of what it is and how good you are at playing this game. I think that old adage is, Andy, if no one stays the same, you either get better or you get worse. And that's the reality, because there's, we've talked about this a ton on this podcast, that with the roster crunch at the Division I level and the shortening of the major league draft and all those things, like the floor has been raised, and there's going to be a lot of people that, used to play college baseball that aren't going to be, or you're going to be on the outside looking in. And the reality is, when it comes down to a lot of this stuff, like it's, you're going to have to look in the mirror and ask yourself if you did enough. And I, for one, would like to be someone who could say, I did what I needed to do. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But, hate to, not do anything for the next 4 or 5 months. And then it comes recruiting season and it's like, I'm way behind the 8 ball. I'm still 81 to 83 and no one likes me. Like, maybe if you use the last 4, November, December, January, February to get yourself a little bit better, maybe you're 4 to 6, 6 to 7. Like, people start taking notice there. So, in short, get your work in over the course of the next 4 or 5 months, so that when you get back to the high school season, you can set yourself up for success going into the summer, so that people start taking notice and you can kind of, start living out the dream of playing college baseball and finding success and having a great career somewhere.
Well said. I think that concludes today's episode. Thank you for listening. Tune in next week. We'll talk to you then. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.